Welcome to the GHE. In this tutorial, we will be making a Killer Snowman pendant. I'm going to begin with a little bit of prep work. I need a variety of stringers for the details that will be in this piece. So first I'm going to start with black. I'm going to need that for some buttons and some eyes. So just heating up the tip of this color rod and pulling out a reasonably thick stringer. I don't need a ton of this, so that's good. I'm just going to burn off my tip. Okay, so I'll just set that one to the side. Now I'm going to need some white. This will become the eyebrows, part of the lip. This one's still reasonably thick. I don't need super skinny stringers for the majority of this project. I just need smaller rods than what I have. It's going to need a carrot nose, so we're going to need a little bit of orange. Only a little bit, so I'm just pulling this down a hair. I still want to keep it reasonably thick so he's got a nice stout nose on him. Just clean up my connection point so it's just good to go when I'm ready to put that nose on. Okay, that's good for our carrot. Now, because this is a killer snowman, we're going to have to put some blood splatters on it near the end. So I'm going to take a transparent red, and this one I'm going to pull out a really skinny stringer with. Okay, and our snowman is going to have gray teeth. So I need a little bit of this. Okay, and then because this is a Christmas pendant, we're going to need some red. It'll end up having a Santa hat on it. And my original intention was to give it a scarf. You'll see in the end that I didn't actually put the scarf on there because of how I sculpted the piece. But this is me prepping the scarf. I'm going to go ahead and build up a gather of glass. What I want is a piece of flat cane, something that's the shape of a scarf. So I'm starting by just making a cylinder out of this solid rod. I'm going to pull off my original handle. And I'm going to shape the color that I have left into that cylinder. Okay, now press it flat. So now because we want this to actually be a piece of cane, I need to pull it out longer now. Just getting the whole thing to an even heat. Stick a rod to the other end. And once my heat base is good, I'm just going to slowly pull. Just do this a little at a time, trying to maintain the same thickness and width the whole length of the rod. Okay, and because the end of a scarf is flat, I'm just going to cut the tip off. That's just going to create the end of the scarf for us. So if you make a snowman and want to put a scarf on it, that's how you make the cane. Okay, last but not least, it's going to need some wooden arms. So I'm going to create a wood grain here by putting a dark brown together with a light brown, and then marbling the two colors together. So start by sticking two rods to each other, side by side. I'm going to start first by giving the whole thing a gentle twist. That also helps to melt them together evenly. Okay, now that we've got our gentle twist, it's time to really get it hot and start marbling it. So I'm just twisting the heck out of this thing. So that passed through the flame, I kept turning in one direction. I'm going to fold this over on itself. And then punch it to the end and continue to twist it. None of this has got to be pretty. We're going for a marbled effect, something random. Okay, now I've got a nice chunk of glass. But in order to marble it some more, I actually want to twist back the other direction. So I'm just kind of sticking it to itself, giving it some twists, stick it to itself, give it some twists. By the time you're done, you'll end up with a nice marbled cane. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out to the diameter that I want for the snowman's arms. And then a chunk of this needs to be the snowman's fingers. So I'm going to heat it up and pull it out even smaller. And then I'll go ahead and separate the two so that I have arms and I have fingers prepped. I always try to get the ends of these cleaned up so they're just ready to stick on when the time comes. Okay, that's all of our prep work. Now let's go ahead and start the snowman. I'm grabbing a piece of pre-pulled white tubing. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to close the end of this. So I'm just going to give it a nice liquid heat. Grab my marver. And then I'm just going to slowly push that end closed. I'm going to grab a clear rod, just pull off the tip of it, just to clean it up. Okay, now that we got a nice clean working tip, I'm going to start getting more of this hot. I need to blow up the glass a little bit and start to even it out. This is a really thick tube, so I don't need it quite that thick for a pendant. I don't want the pendant to be super heavy. A little more air. Alright, now it's getting to a workable wall thickness. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. Okay, so all I tried to do was create a little bit of a taper. So you have that big bubble for the snowman on the bottom, medium-sized one in the middle. And in order to create that bubble, I'm going to use my diamond shears and just gently crimp it down. You could do this with a butter knife. You could do this with a pair of jacks. You could even do this on your V-marver. I just find that the diamond shears give me the most control. So now that that bottom bubble has been separated, I'm going to go ahead and heat a little bit higher up to cut in the second bubble. A little bit smaller than the first. That bottom one's still pretty thick, so I can still blow it out a little bit to make it bigger. Okay, so I'm getting the whole thing hot to be able to blow it out a little bit more. I also don't want those super sharp creases from the diamond shears. That sharp edge can cause a piece to crack right there later on. So blowing this out a little bit actually benefits me. Okay, that looks much better. You can see how the diamond shears set up that divot and it stayed there. All right, I'm gonna pop a hole in the bottom of this and switch directions. That way I can put a handle on it. Just want to make sure that that hole is the same size as the handle that will go on it. And just get that liquid hot before you stick them together. This is going to be your handle for the majority of the rest of the piece. Okay, I'm going to break down to my small flame and cut off the section of tubing that I want for the head. Because this is kind of cartoony and I want room to be able to sculpt, I'm actually not going to make the third bubble the smallest one. It'll be about the same size as the bottom one, just a slightly different shape. Okay, the whole top bubble needs to get blown out a little bit. Alright, it's getting there, but I want it to blow out a little bit more. Especially where I cut in that line with the diamond shears. Remember I said that I don't want any sharp angles like that. Okay, I'm much happier with that shape right there. So now it's time to start sculpting this snowman. I always start with the mouth. It's usually the most predominant feature on my sculptures. So I specifically heat where I want the mouth to be and start creating a divot with my reamer. Just rolling it up and down. That's going to create the top lip and the bottom lip. Got a good setup for where the mouth will be, but I want more mass in the lips. So I'm going to take my white stringer and draw them on, building up that mass. Starting in the corner of the mouth, down, across the bottom lip, and then back up to the corner of the mouth. And I'll go over that line 2 or 3 times, building up that mass. Alright, now I really need to make sure that all this is melted in well. At this point, I always think of it kind of like working with clay, where you can just take your butter knife, take your reamer, push it around. As long as the mass is there, you can move it wherever you want it. So just crispening up that mouth. Get inside the mouth and define those corners, really making sure that those rods I drew on are fully melted in. There we go, work our way to the other corner. So I'm just defining the top of the mouth now. So by cutting in these lines afterwards, it really defines the outside of that mouth. Okay, I want to do the upper lip. Same thing, I'm just kind of drawing a line back and forth. And I'm going to go all the way around with it so there aren't any seams. It's just one smooth line. Okay, I'm going to melt that in a little bit. And then just refine those edges. We're going to put teeth on this too. We don't want those lips in the way. I'm just straightening into hair. Okay, I'm going to start with the eyes, because the eyes actually get melted in all the way, and I don't want to screw up my teeth while I do that. So just a dollop of black, and then I'm going to push it flat. Just want to make sure that's nice and melted in. Do that again for the other eye. Press it flat. And then make sure it's nice and melted in. I'm going to return some heat to the body and to the bottom of that jaw. Just so I can keep working, I want to make sure that it has a nice heat base. Okay, now it's time for those teeth. I'm going to pull off a workable section of this gray. Start with the bottom row of teeth in the corner. And just like the lips, I'm going to draw a line back and forth until I get enough mass. Once it's drawn on, I've got to melt it in, making sure that I do the front of the teeth and the back of the teeth. Once it's melted, I grab my shears, starting in the middle, and I'm going to separate those teeth. This is always tricky on such a small piece, especially as we build up the mouth. Just got a little bit of dust on it from when I cut those teeth, so I just wiped it out. Move them around with my dental pick. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw the upper row of teeth, going back and forth. Okay, give that a good heat. Melt those in. Be mindful of the bottom teeth that you don't melt them too much. All right, start in the middle, separate those teeth. I did 4 teeth on the bottom, so I'm going to do 4 teeth on the top. Okay, I'm just going to put some heat back into the head now that all those teeth are on there. Now I want to make the teeth a little bit sharper. So I'm going to heat each tooth independently. Just touch a rod to the tip of it and just pull it up to a point. Okay, now that I've got the bottom row, I'm going to do the same thing to the top. Alright, I like the little fangs on here. And put some heat back into the head. Primarily heating the back of the head. I don't want to deform my teeth. But by putting that heat into the back of the head, it will push the heat towards the front. And the head of this guy has gotten pretty kicked back while I've been doing this, so I'm just going to push it forward a little bit. It's also a great way to close the mouth if you were doing that type of a sculpture. Kind of flatten to the back of the head, so I'm just going to heat it and puff it out a little bit. Alright, looks good. Just going to pull the teeth out just a little bit. Now it's time to give this guy some eyebrows and make him look angry. So with my white stringer, I'm just going to draw a line right above his eye, slightly onto it. And then I'm going to use my butter knife to push it into the shape of an angry eye. Just add a little bit of detail around that eye. Not much. Snowman is round, so I don't want to create too much detail in there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other eye. Just give it a push, trying to make it even with the other one. Alright, there's the beginning of our angry face. So every once in a while you just want to go back in, put some warmth into the whole thing. Okay, time for that carrot nose. Just want to make sure that it's going to fit between the eyes before I stick it on. Get both connection points liquid hot. Just bring them together. I'll hold it outside the flame for a second to let it set up. And then I'm going to pull off the tip of that nose. There we go. Put some more heat back into it. By holding the piece further out at the end of the flame, I'm less likely to melt out that detail, while still providing good heat for the piece. Okay, now it's time for his Santa hat. So I'm just going to grab a red rod. And I'm going to start heating where I want to connect it to his head. Okay, I'm going to stick, and I'm just going to keep pushing into the top of his head, kind of working that red around, making sure that the whole touchdown point is big enough, something that I'm happy with. And then I'll continue to build a mass up on the end of this until it's big enough to be his hat. You can see I'm kind of keeping it cone shaped so it'll come down to a point. Make sure it's all melted real good. Put some heat back into the piece. And so at the beginning I should have pulled out a little bit more white stringer, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The Santa hat needs a little fluffy ruffle around it. The piece was outside the flame for a second, so I'm just putting some more heat back into it before I go in and do my detail work. Okay, so I'm just going to make a connection point at the back and slowly draw a line around, right at the base of that red hat. I want this ruffle to have a little more mass than just drawing a string around would do, so I'm going to do this a couple times, following that same line. And I'm going to pull off where I originally started. Okay, I'm going to put some heat back into the piece. I'm going to go back in on the top of his hat. This is going to do two things. One, it's going to melt those lines in. And two, it's going to allow me to make it look all ruffly. Just giving it a little twist with my tweezers. Moving it out of the way so it's not melted into the eyebrows. Okay, I just want to define that line, making sure it is separated from the eyebrows. That's the trick when they're the same color. I'm just pushing those ruffles around, making sure they frame the face the way I want them to. Okay, back to putting some heat into the piece. Okay, so because this is a pendant, I actually need to put 2 holes in this. So I'm going to start heating the side of his head. I'm going to give it a little bit of air. Start to pop a hole. See how I didn't pop the hole all the way through? That'll make it easier to be able to get this one to do the same thing, and then I can pop the holes at the same time. If I popped that other hole first, I'd have to blow really hard right now in order to get this one to blow out. Okay, now that that's open, we'll open up both of them. And I just want to make sure that those holes are opened up to the size that I want. And if you look at this from the front, they kind of stick out. They look a little weird. So by giving them a little bit of heat, I can push them in. It just cleans up the silhouette of your piece. Still want to make sure those are round and big enough to accept whatever necklace it's going to hang on. Okay, so now that we have those holes in it, I want to finish the top of this. Needs a little fluff ball right on the end of the hat. Just going to build up a little bit of a mass. And then I'm going to use my tweezers just like I did before. Just give it little twists. So I want to change the shape of my hat a little bit. I don't want that little puff ball to be straight up. I want to give it a little more character than that. So I'm going to gently punny to it, not much of a connection at all. Just bend it over. And snap my punny off. There we go. That gives it way more personality. Now that I've got the whole top of this done, I want to switch directions. So I'm going to start by creating a handle that has a little bit of white on it. I'm going to attach it to that puff ball on the top of his hat. So I like my connecting rod to be the same color. And this is going to be a liquid seal. This needs to be a sturdy little handle. I heat up some of the clear on the rod so that I can pull my handle back around to straight with the piece. I'm going to go ahead and burn off that tube. Clean up that little bit of clear that's on the end. So still just making sure that there's a nice heat base in the whole piece at all times. Just careful not to heat your punning. Okay, so with these fancy pendants, I can't expect that people are going to wear it every single day. So I'm going to press the bottom flat on this. That way it can sit on a shelf and be displayed when it's not being worn. Squatting it up a little bit too also adds to the personality of the snowman. Fire polish the bottom of it. Make sure I still got a nice heat base in it. And now I'm going to give him his buttons. So this is why I decided not to put the scarf on the piece, because I didn't want to cover up this detail. And his mouth is so big too that I think the scarf would have looked weird. So just like the eyes, I make a dot. This second dot I'm going to make bigger than the first, just for a little bit of a cartoony effect. Press it flat as well. Make sure they're melted in, give them a good fire polish. Okay, so this actually needs to go into the kiln for a little bit. I need to make the arms. And we're going to give this guy a little knife in his hand. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to start by grabbing a gray rod. It's a little bit lighter gray than what I used for the teeth. I've got my mashers ready. I want to press this flat. Give it a good squeeze. Now that I've got it flattened out, I want to heat it up. Nice even heat. Get a punny rod ready to attach to the tip. And just like we were making that scarf, I just want to pull this down a little bit. Make it a little more of a flat piece of cane. Just evenly heating both sides and a gentle little pull. Okay, that'll make a nice knife blade. So I'm going to pull off my rod. Cutting off the back side is going to give me a much straighter line. So I'm just going to push this around just a little bit with my paddle, just making sure it's still flat. And I need a piece of black that will become the handle of this knife. So towards one end of this gray, I'm going to heat it up, attach my black, make sure it's well melted together. And I'm going to start to slightly pull that black down. Okay, that's a good length on it, so I'm going to cut off my black rod. And just begin to round out that handle. Okay, so there's the back end of my knife. I'm going to reattach that black, but this time as a punty. Now I want to shape the front half of my knife. Primarily getting the bottom part hot, so that when I pull off, I can pull at an angle. It's going to pull up the tip of that knife. Okay, so that transparent red that we had pulled originally to look like little bloody marks, I'm going to start putting some of those onto this knife as drips. This knife, when it's finally done and on the piece, will have the tip down, so it will actually be dripping blood from that end. I'm going to add some dots to the side like splatter marks. Then I'm going to go ahead and add drips to the tip of this. These drips are also a great place to punty while I do the hand holding it. Just making sure I still got some good heat in my knife. And I'm going to do a liquid seal to that longest strip. Go ahead and pull off that black connection point. Alright, that is our finished little knife. I'm going to go ahead and pop it in the kiln. I'm going to grab the snowman. and the rod that I prepared to become his arms. Heat up both connection points, stick them together liquid hot, pull it out of the flame, and just pause for a second while it sets up. Put it back in the flame and pull off the length that I want for his arm. So this is actually the shoulder to the elbow. Just making sure that's sealed in real well. Especially because this is a pendant, we don't want it knocking into anything later on and breaking. Okay, I'm going to clean up the end of the color rod so that I can go ahead and put the other arm on. Same thing, liquid seal to make that connection. Pull it out of the flame, let it freeze for a second. This arm's at a slightly different angle. And I'm just going to pull off the length that I want. I go back in, make sure that's really well melted in, just like the other arm. Make sure they're both the same size, roughly the same shape. Okay, and it's going to go back in the kiln while I make the hands. So to make the hands, I'm going to use what's left over of the rod that I just used to make the arms. I'm going to attach a small handle to it. And just cut this rod in half. So this will become the forearm and the palm of the hand. So I'm going to build up a little bit of a mass in order to press flat as the palm of the hand. Just going to make the top of the hand a little bit flatter to accept those fingers. Now I grab the smaller rod that I prepared earlier that's the same marbled colors. I'll start on the corner and just put one finger. Liquid connection point. Let it set up. And then pull off this finger at the length you want it to be. Clean up the tip of my rod so that I can do that again. Pull it off the same length as the first finger. Alright, now it needs a thumb. So I'm only giving this one 2 fingers. Liquid connection point. And pull it off at the length you want. Okay, so because they're tree branches, I'm just going to press the ends flat. Makes them look more like snapped off wood. Now that I'm happy with the shape of them, I'm going to heat up the palm so I can start moving the fingers around. Okay, so I'm happy with the shaping on that hand, but I need to punty to one of the fingers because my connection point is on the other end of this hand. Punny to the finger, heat up a little bit of my punny, and pull it straight to the hand. Then go ahead and burn off the other side. Okay, so that is one prepared little hand ready to be stuck onto the snowman, but I need two. So I'm not worried about this little piece of glass breaking, so I'm just setting the hand to the side. That way I can use it judging proportions on the next hand. Same thing as before, start building up a mass in order to press it flat to become the palm of the hand. Press it flat and flatten out the tip a little bit. All right, now it's ready for its fingers. So pull off your fingers the same length as the original hand. Just check it against the original, making sure that I already made the left hand, that this one is the right hand. So I left all my fingers just a hair longer because it's easier to remove the glass than put more on. So I'm just going to clean up that end now. Same thing as the other one, press each fingertip flat. Okay, so this is the hand that will be holding on to that knife. I'm going to keep it out of the kiln, but put the original hand away. So I want to heat up the connection point of where the hand is going to wrap around the handle of this knife. Heat both evenly and bring them together. You really want to make sure that's a liquid connection between the two. I'm going to pull off the rod that was attached to the hand and start bending the thumbs and fingers around so they're actually grabbing the handle of that knife. Making sure as I push them that any spot that is touching the handle of that knife is a liquid seal. I haven't even sealed them yet. I'm just getting closer and closer and closer. Now I'm going to do one last heat and push those fingers into place. That's going to make sure that that seal is a good one. Now I've got too much arm here, so I'm going to pull it off to the same length as the other one. Bend it around a little bit so it looks like he's grabbing it real tight. Okay, so that's the finished hand with the knife in hand. I want to make sure that there's some warmth in the whole piece before I attach this to the snowman. I'm holding it really far out in my flame so that it doesn't start to move around on me too much. Just getting a little bit more drip out of that knife. Okay, now that I've got a good even heat, I'm going to go ahead and grab the snowman. Want to heat up both connection points liquid hot and bring them together in the flame. I'm also going to brace this knife to the body, just adding strength. So I'm going to do that now while the arm is still moving. It's also going to act as a good brace when I go back in just to make sure the elbow of the snowman is done really well. Okay, I'm going to get that elbow nice and hot. Just give it a little pull. And that's just going to define the elbow a little better for us. There we go. Okay, so it needs its other arm, but it's been out of the kiln for a minute. So I'm just going to let both of these rest in here. Flash to the future, I'm going to grab the snowman back out. Before I put that hand on it, I'm going to add some of the smaller details. It may be trickier to put them on after the hand is there, so I'm just going to do it now. And these are just going to be the blood splatter marks. So I'm going to put a little bit on his lip, bring it down to just a little drip. And then I'm just going to place a few more around his body. You never see the back of a pendant, but I always feel like it needs to have detail there anyways. Just making sure I still got a good heat in the piece. A few more drips in a different spot. So even though this is red, the color is a striking color, so it looks clear the whole time that I'm working with it. It has to sit in the kiln for a set amount of time before it'll actually turn back to red. I'm just making sure I got a good heat in the piece. I'm going to go ahead and grab the hand. And same thing as before. Let's get both connection points liquid hot. And just like with the knife, I want to brace this, so I'm going to gently touch it to his face. That way with the two connection points, I know I've got added stability. Make sure that finger is nice and melted. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this elbow that I did to the other one. Just give it a good melt and a little pull. Back to a good generalized heat. I need to grab my tweezers to be able to finish this piece off. Get the tips of them a little bit warm so that they don't thermal shock the snowman. Then I'm going to grab it through the holes. Snap my punny off and just fire polish that end. And that's it. That's our finished snowman. Fire polish the eyes, make them look all glowy. And that concludes the tutorial on how to make a Killer Snowman pendant. Thank you for subscribing to the GHE.